I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to tell you which ones I would actually choose, which ones you don't even need to worry about, and which ones I might go for if I had a little extra budget. Hello lovely couples and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, wedding planner and owner of Bluebird Creative. I provide a weekly dose of wedding planning goodness for the modern couple. So if you haven't already guys, make sure you subscribe to my channel and then you'll be in the know every time a new video drops. This week I am talking about wedding signage. I have got 9 different ideas and different options and different places for you to have signage at your wedding. But the question is, not only am I giving you these ideas today, but the question is actually going to be, do you need them? Do you actually need them? Let's be honest. So let's dive in. So guys, let's start off with number 1, and that is of course a welcome sign. Now a welcome sign would be very, very simple. You would have it at the beginning of the day when your guests are arriving, and it would probably say something along the lines of welcome to the wedding of. This is actually quite a good sign to have if you are at a hotel, for example, and you just want guests to make sure that they feel like, yes, we've arrived at the right place. Or perhaps if you don't have an exclusive venue and it is a hotel and you're in one part of the venue, if they can see other people milling around, they might get a bit confused. But if you've got the welcome sign at one point, they'll kind of know, okay, yeah, we're in the right place and we need to go in this direction. It's also just a really nice way to welcome your guests and to make them feel, yeah, we're in the right place. You can also repurpose a welcome sign for the evening. So if you are over here in the UK and you have got evening guests arriving, I know you guys in the US, you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. I've talked about this in other videos. We're weird over here. We do 2 parts to our weddings. But if you're here in the UK and you have evening guests arriving, you can repurpose it. So again, those evening guests, when they arrive, they've got a nice little welcome and a touch point there as well. So the second place that you could have signage, or the second type of sign you could have, is an order of the day. Now, I don't mean order of service. That would come under stationery, and that is part of the ceremony, and that's breaking down what's happening in the ceremony. I'm talking about order of the day. So this is a sign that gives a rough breakdown of all the big things that are happening throughout your day. So for example, it might say ceremony at 2 p.m. It might say drinks reception at 2:30 p.m. It might say 4 p.m. is going to be the wedding breakfast. It might say 6 p.m. is the speeches. It might say cake cutting and first dance at 7 p.m. and so on. It's just the rough bits. This is a nice thing to do, but just because it gives people an idea of what to expect, to kind of know what's coming. And for some people, they absolutely love that. It also gives people an idea of when they're eating. And I'm laughing because I am one of those people that wants to know when I'm eating, because if I know when I'm eating, I'm happy. Okay, nobody needs hangry, Lauren, but that's another story. So guests might be thinking the same thing. If they can kind of like plan out and go, okay, I know I'm eating at 5, or I know I'm eating at 4 or whatever. They kind of know what's to come, and that makes people happy. So an order of service can be quite a nice thing. It's often put together with the welcome sign, and it can then be moved or repurposed by your coordinator, or somebody at the venue can help out with that, or even a bridesmaid. And that can be repurposed to the drinks reception, just in case guests didn't get a chance to see it before the ceremony. So sticking with signage that you might use at the beginning part of your day, you could have a sign for an unplugged ceremony. So if an unplugged ceremony is really important to you, I would highly suggest having a sign that says so. This may come across rude, and I do not mean it in a derogative way, but you sometimes have to treat your guests like they're stupid. Now, I'm not saying that they are stupid, but when you're planning an event, you have to kind of just think like that so that you can plan for that, and then things usually go to plan. I hope that makes sense. So the best thing to do is to have signage, because it's just an extra touch point, an extra thing that people are going to see that says to them, oh yeah, no, I remember, it was in the invites. It's an unplugged ceremony. It's that extra reminder. It's also worth mentioning it to your registrar or your vicar or your celebrant or whoever's running your ceremony, just letting them know this is an unplugged ceremony. Would you be able to make an announcement just to remind our guests of that? So just having those little touch points, if that's something that's really important to you, then I would get the signage to say it's an unplugged ceremony, and that you don't want guests getting their phones out and taking photos during your wedding ceremony. And that would obviously be placed with the welcome sign or at the entrance to the ceremony so that it's really clear and really obvious for your guests to see, and that little reminder as they're walking in to take their seats. Another piece of signage that you could actually have during the ceremony as well is something to indicate how you want your guests to sit. Now, if you don't have a wedding coordinator and you just want it quite chilled, you might want to just have a little piece of signage that says, for example, take a seat, not a side. So if you're not going down the tradition of bride's family on the left and groom's family on the right, and you just want your guests to sit wherever they want because they will walk in and go, oh, do we need to sit on a certain side? If you've got signage that's indicating, go where you want, guys, then there's not that moment of, what do we do? Where do we go? So you could just have take a seat, not a side. Or if you would rather that they sit on a particular side, then you could have signage that indicates that as well. You don't have to use that phrasing. If you look on Pinterest, there's some really cool ways to write take a seat, not a side, or a version of that. I'm throwing in an extra freebie one here for you guys, which isn't included in the 9 pieces of signage, and that's reserve signs. Now, some people might just print off a piece of paper, or you might want to actually have a little sign that perhaps goes on the end of the row, which could showcase that the front row or the front 2 rows, however you do it, or however many people you've got, are reserved for the bridal party or for immediate family or so on. So that might just want to be a little bit of signage that you get if you've got it in your budget, as opposed to just printing off and placing per sheet. So moving along with the day, as we go into the drinks reception, a piece of signage that you might decide to have at this point in the day is perhaps a wedding hashtag sign. So if you've decided that it's okay for people to use their phones and to post on social media, and that's absolutely fine with you, then perhaps you want to use a hashtag for your wedding, so that in case you miss any pictures or nobody tags you, you can easily find all the images. So if you're having a wedding hashtag, having a sign to showcase that is a really good idea, because again, it just reminds people. You may have put it on your website, you may have put it in the invites, however you've done things, but having it there on the day will remind people, because they won't have remembered. They just won't have. Maybe like your besties will, but the likelihood of the majority of people is that they wouldn't have remembered. So have that signage, they'll see it and then they'll go, oh yes, and they'll take action on that. And then obviously at this point, we're going to have guests that are moving through into the wedding breakfast. Now, during the drinks reception, if we are over here in the UK, we would call this the drinks reception. If you're in the US, then this would be the cocktail hour, in which case you might want to have some bar signage to showcase what cocktails are on offer if you're having cocktails. So for example, if you're having his or hers cocktails that you've specifically chosen, then you might want to have a little bit of signage on the bar to showcase what you've actually picked, or if there are particular things on offer. If you're doing that over here in the UK, then again, same. But in the UK, you might decide to have your cocktail hour after the wedding breakfast, perhaps in an in-between bit between the wedding breakfast and the evening reception. If you've got a turnaround, for example, and the room's being turned around and you need to move to another space by the bar, that might be classed as your cocktail hour. So you might want to have the signage then. But at the end of the day, if you're having cocktails and you're having a bar and you want to have signage, then have signage, basically. So moving on to the next really big piece of signage, and possibly one of the most obvious ones, it's obviously the table plan. Now, again, in the US, you tend to do escort cards, but I don't think that's always the case. And over here in the UK, we tend to have a table plan. And sometimes we do escort cards, which I am loving, and I love to display an escort card in a really fun way. But either way, you need a big piece of signage which showcases where your guests are going to sit. And you can do that in so many different ways, and you can get so creative. But if you don't have that signage, people will not know where they're going. And this would obviously be displayed outside of the location of where you're having your wedding breakfast, also called the reception or the dinner, so that it's obvious as people are going through, they can kind of check where are they sitting, and then they'll make their way through. Just make sure that you place it in a place that's easy for them to see as they go through into the next room, into the space, but also doesn't create too much of a bottleneck. Otherwise you end up with a massive queue. You want to try and keep things flowing as much as possible. And then moving on, another piece of signage that you could have is something to showcase the guest book table. So if you are having a guest book table or something along those lines, maybe you're doing something a little bit different and a little bit fun, you might want to have a little bit of signage on that table to explain what guests need to do and just to kind of highlight what the table is. And same goes for the cake table. Again, I mean, the cake will probably do the saying for itself, but if you want to have a nice piece of stationery and a bit of signage on the cake table, then you could do that, perhaps a cool slogan or whatever you decide to do. But that's another area where you could have a bit of signage. So there you have it, guys. There's 9 plus a bonus suggestion for different places to have signage throughout your wedding day. Now the question is, what do you actually need? Now I'm going to give you my 3 choices of what I would pick at a wedding. So number 1, I think the most important piece of signage that you can have, guys, is the table plan. You need it, okay? Otherwise it's a free-for-all. I do not recommend that. Have the table plan. If it's escort cards, same. Do it, my friends. The next thing that I would choose out of all the different options for stationery is probably the welcome sign. I like that touch point. When you arrive, you know you're in the right place, and it's kind of the first point of the wedding, and it gives you a little bit of an idea of what the vibe is and what the theme is and the detail. So I really like that. So my second choice would be a welcome sign, and my third choice would be order of the day. These are all things that kind of just are nice touch points, and I think they just keep the day working and they give people an indication of what's happening. I mean, the order of the day, it tells people when they're eating, and I'm always a fan of that. So those would be my top 3, but my number 1 is definitely a table plan. If you can only do 1 piece of signage, do the table plan. If you can go up to 3, those are my top 3. If I could choose extras, if I had extra budget and I could choose extras on top of that, I would choose having some signage for your guest book table, having a his and hers cocktail signage for the bar, and having signage for the cake. So those are just nice little details which you do not need to have. But if you wanted to add details of your theme and your design throughout the day, those are the areas where I would add them. In my mind, I wouldn't choose the wedding hashtag, the unplugged ceremony, or the take a seat, not a side. But the reason, hear me out, the reason I say that is because my clients will have me. So when I'm there on a wedding, I'm going to let all the guests know where they need to sit. My guests are pretty chilled about phones, and will have the celebrant or the registrar announce that. So if I didn't have the budget for extra signage, I know that somebody that's running the ceremony is going to make that announcement, and hopefully that's enough. But obviously, if it's really important to you, then that's going to take priority over having a sign for the cake. If you've got a wedding hashtag, then that's going to take priority over the cake or the guest book or so on. So it's just working out your priorities and what's important to you. So the ones I personally didn't pick were to do with the ceremony, but it's choosing the important things to you. It's my saying, guys, you know, you do you, but without fail, you need a table plan. That is the foundation level to signage, is the table plan. All the extras are fluff and lovely and details, and they make it beautiful, and they add that extra level and they make it more personal, but they're not needed. So just bear that in mind. Don't feel like you need to have all of these suggestions, but you definitely do need a table plan. So my lovelies, there you go. I hope you found this video helpful. Let me know in the comments box below what signage you've decided to go for your wedding. I would absolutely love to know. You know, have you gone for 3? Have you just gone for 1? Have you got a table plan? Please don't tell me you haven't got a table plan. I might cry. Anyway, guys, have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week for some more wedding planning goodness. See you later.